Forget the noisy streets of Paris. Forget the perfumed corridors of Versailles. Today, you are traveling to the end of the world. Welcome to the province of Gévaudan in southern France. The year is 1764. Here, the landscape shows no mercy. It is a land of steep mountains, dense forests that block the sunlight, and a constant wind that cuts the skin like a razor. Life here is hard. Peasants live in near total isolation, relying on their sheep and cattle to avoid starving during the winter. But in this particular year, something more deadly than the cold arrived in these hills. Imagine that you are Jeanne Boulet. You are 14 years old. It is a summer day, but at these altitudes, the air is cold. You are herding cattle at the edge of the forest, a place your parents always told you to respect. The silence is absolute, broken only by the sound of wind in the trees and the occasional bleating of a sheep. Suddenly, the animals grow restless. The cattle, which are usually not afraid of ordinary wolves, begin to retreat, forming a defensive circle. You sense a strange smell in the air. It is not the smell of a wolf. It is something musky, rotten, wild. You look toward the tree line. Something moves in the shadows, something too large to be a dog, too fast to be a bear. The attack is not like that of a natural predator seeking food. It is an attack of fury. In seconds, the piece of the countryside is torn apart. Jeanne Boulet was the first official victim, and what they found of her, or what was left of her, began a nightmare that would last for 3 years. It was not just an animal hunting. It was something that seemed to enjoy killing. The news spread like wildfire through the villages. The beast is among us. And so fear became the new master of Gevaudan. As the months passed, the list of dead grew. Women, children, lone shepherds. No one was safe. But what made everything even more terrifying were the accounts of the survivors. They did not describe a wolf. Wolves fear humans. They hunt in packs and retreat when wounded. This thing hunted alone, and it had no fear. Imagine being in a local tavern, listening to the trembling whispers of those who had seen the creature. They described it as a monster straight out of hell. They said it was larger than a calf, with a broad, powerful chest like that of a horse. Its fur was reddish, with a strange black stripe running along its back. The tail was long and thick, moving like that of a feline, not a canine. But the worst part was the head, a gigantic jaw, teeth that could crush a human skull as if it were an eggshell, and eyes that seemed to glow with a malevolent intelligence. Can you feel the panic taking hold? People began to believe they were not dealing with an animal. Was it a demon, a punishment from God for the sins of France? Or worse, a werewolf? The beast showed military tactics. It knew when to strike. It ambushed its victims when they were most vulnerable. It leapt over 3-meter-high stone walls with the agility of a cat. Bullets seemed to have no effect. Hunters swore they had hit the creature at point-blank range, only to see it rise, shake its fur, and flee into the forest, leaving a trail of blood that mysteriously disappeared. The winter of 1764 arrived, and the white snow of Gevaudan began to be stained red with alarming frequency. The churches filled. The people prayed, not for the salvation of their souls, but not to be the next to meet those eyes in the darkness. News of the massacre reached the place where all news eventually arrived, the Palace of Versailles. Remember, this is the reign of Louis XV. France had just lost the 7 Years' War. National pride was wounded, and now, in the very heart of the kingdom, an animal was defying royal authority. The English press mocked the king. The French army can't even defeat a wolf. This could not continue. The king decided to treat Gevaudan not as a rural crisis, but as a war zone. You see the main road of the province begin to tremble. It is not the beast. It is the march of the Royal Dragoons. Captain Duhamel and his elite soldiers, war veterans, arrive in the region with immaculate uniforms, muskets, and arrogance. To them, hunting an animal would be child's play. They occupy the villages. The soldiers, who were supposed to be saviors, become a second nightmare for the peasants. They eat what little food remains, drink the stored wine, destroy crops during the hunts, and treat the locals with contempt. "Step aside, peasants. Let the professionals work," was the attitude. They organized the largest hunts in the history of France. Imagine thousands of men, beating drums, shouting, sweeping the forests inch by inch, driving any animal toward the dragoons' firing line. The noise was deafening. And the result? Total failure. The beast, with its supernatural intelligence, simply vanished. It slipped through the soldiers' lines like a ghost. While the army guarded the north, the beast killed in the south. It was a public humiliation. The most powerful army in Europe was being defeated by a creature in the forest. Duhamel was recalled, disgraced. The beast remained, and now it seemed even bolder. With the army humiliated, the king changed tactics. He needed specialists. First, he sent the Denevals, father and son, the greatest wolf hunters of Normandy. They were said to have killed more than 1,000 wolves. They arrived without the pomp of the army, but with a cold, calculating method. They studied the tracks. They said, "This is not an ordinary wolf. The claws do not retract. The gait is different." But even their experience failed. The beast mocked their traps. The king, impatient, played his last card, François Antoine, the bearer of the royal arquebus, the king's personal marksman. Antoine came to Gevaudan not only to hunt, but to restore the honor of the monarchy. He brought gigantic hunting dogs, trained to hold lions and bears. He brought detailed maps and spies. For months, Antoine tracked the creature. And then, in September of 1765, it seemed the nightmare was over. At an isolated abbey, Antoine cornered a gigantic wolf, a massive animal weighing 80 kilograms. The shot was true. The animal fell. Antoine declared victory. The beast is dead. The body of the animal was embalmed and rushed to Versailles. Imagine the scene. The monster of Gevaudan displayed in the gilded halls we saw in the previous video, surrounded by white-wigged nobles applauding politely. The king declared the matter closed. Antoine received money, land, and glory. France breathed a sigh of relief. Newspapers published heroic illustrations. But in Gévaudan, the peasants looked toward the forest and knew the truth. That wolf killed by Antoine was large, yes, but it did not have the black stripe. It did not have the demonic behavior. The silence lasted 2 months, and then, in December, the snow turned red again. 2 children were attacked. The beast had returned, or worse, it had never left. Desperation was now total. The king, having declared victory, refused to admit he was wrong. "There is no beast," Paris said. "They are just ordinary wolves." The people of Gevaudan were abandoned to their fate. They were alone in the darkness. This is where the most enigmatic figure of this story enters. Jean Chastel, a local hunter, a man of few words with a strange reputation. Some said he had a connection to the beast. His own son had been seen with enormous mastiffs that matched the description of the monster. On June 19th, 1767, a local hunt was organized, not by the king, but by desperate local nobles. Chastel was there. Legend says he was not hunting in the traditional way. He was sitting in a clearing, reading the Bible and praying. They say he loaded his weapon with bullets he cast himself, bullets made from medals of the Virgin Mary, sacred silver bullets. Suddenly, the beast appeared. According to the accounts, it did not attack. It stopped. It looked at Chastel. Was it a moment of mutual recognition, an animal hesitating, or something more sinister? Chastel closed his Bible, put away his glasses, raised his musket, and fired. A single shot. The creature that had survived armies, thousands of bullets, and countless traps fell dead instantly. When they opened the animal's stomach, They found the shoulder of a small girl killed days earlier. It was the definitive proof. The nightmare had finally ended. But the end of the beast was only the beginning of the mystery. The body was taken away to be examined. The autopsy report described an animal that the science of the time could not classify. Feet unlike those of a wolf, an absurd number of teeth. Many modern historians believe it was not a wolf. Could it have been a hyena brought from Africa and trained to kill? Could it have been a wolf dog, a hybrid genetically created to serve as a weapon of war? And here enters the most disturbing theory of all, the serial killer theory. Remember Jean Chastel, the man who killed it? Remember that the beast stopped in front of him. Is it possible that the beast was an animal trained by Chastel himself or by his unstable son? An animal used as an instrument to conceal sadistic human crimes. The beast's carcass, poorly preserved, rotted before reaching Paris. The king ordered it to be destroyed and buried in an unknown location. The evidence disappeared. What remains are the graves of more than 100 victims scattered across the mountains. If you walk through the forests of Gevaudan today, the mist is still the same. The silence is still heavy. And although the beast died in 1767, the question remains: was the true monster the animal with claws, or the human hand that may have guided it? This was the reconstruction of one of the greatest enigmas in history. If you had the courage to face the forest with us, subscribe to the channel. The darkness hides secrets, but we bring the light. Until next time.